I am in solidarity with you on that one. That must have been rough. Yeah, so appreciate the breakdown, and hello to you in Washington, DC. Oh yeah, Sweden. Sweden gets very little sunlight during the winter. Must be very weird.
We got a San Fran. So we're right on the dot here. So I'm going to get us kicked off. Welcome everybody. I see lots of people continuing to kind of stream in and join here. So as you're trickling in, welcome. I will say one last time for housekeeping. Please feel free to use the chat feature. When you use chat, you should go to panelists and attendees, not just panelists, because the chat is a great place for you to have a running conversation and discussion with your peers as we are having the presentation conversation. If you have a question specifically for FISA, you should use the Q&A feature to make sure that we can see them and prioritize them and get an answer for you. And right now, we are all chit-chatting in the chat about where you are from, where you're dialing in from, and what the weather is like right now. So please feel free to kind of pop those in there and hang out with us in the chat with our global crew. With that, I will get us kicked off. You can pop me to the next slide if you don't mind.
Of course.
Wonderful. So conversation really near and dear to my heart today, and really excited to be part of the discussion with all of you. So I'm here with our guest of honor, Faiza Mohammed, who is a community consultant. She has worked with companies like Facebook, Bumble, Peanut, and she's also the founder of her own community, Somalis in Tech. And so just really fantastic community professional. And so we convinced her to come join us here today so that she can show us how she has strengthened the relationship through and between community and product across multiple organizations. So this is kind of something that she has developed a unique perspective on and has become really skilled in, finding ways to make product plus community equal really happy users, right? So she's going to share what really good collaboration looks like, how to support your community team, and what the community team has to offer you as a product professional. So if you will pop us to the next slide, please. I will introduce myself. So my name is Georgina Donahue. I am the director of the Pragmatic Alumni Community, which is our community at Pragmatic, where we hang out with all of our alumni. So really our goal there is to create a community around people that are all speaking the same language. We've all been through pragmatic training and are really working together collaboratively to apply all of those best practices in the industry to, everybody's unique reality so we can all move forward together. So of course, I'm a little bit of a community and product nerd, so worlds are clashing together today in the most wonderful ways. So I think you're all really going to enjoy this. Faiza is absolutely brilliant. So I'm just going to pass it right over to her to share a little bit more about who she is, and then we'll kind of dive into the conversation. So go right ahead.
Thank you so much for that handoff, Georgina. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I can see that there's already 155 of you. That's incredible. I'm going to stop looking at that number so I can continue talking. So yeah, welcome. I've kind of named this segment Build the Bridge between community and product. I use the bridge analogy because I enjoy being visual. You'll see this through the presentation. I try to add the odd visual here and there just to keep everyone kind of visually engaged, as well as this is going to be a little conversational as well. I will be directing some questions towards you, as well as it would only be fair to include Georgina in the conversation too. We are both community and product nerds, and I will be talking about examples of what a community manager is, and we need real life examples. So I'm in the chat, Georgina's in the chat. So yeah, really excited to kick this off. So let's get started. let's start with myself. Let's see how long I can talk about myself for. My name is Faiza Mohammed. I'm a community consultant. I'm a community builder, nurturer, manager, and mentor. It's all a bit of a long-winded way of saying I'm a community obsessive by heart. So much so, not only outside of my main role, which I'm currently contracting at Facebook, I'm also co-founder of my own community organization called Somalis in Tech. Somalis in Tech is a community organization which aims to increase the visibility and representation of Somali talent within the tech industry. Really, it was born out of the fact I never saw other Somalis in the industry. Boom, created a community, and boom, there were 600 that joined within the first month and a half. So apparently we exist. It was just a matter of creating that space in which everyone could come together and connect. Where have I been within the community sphere? I've dotted in community operations, program management, and more importantly, linking a lot of this presentation back to my work with product teams, mostly, increasing the visibility of community departments and creating collaboration cross-functionally with teams. I honestly believe that community teams can work with any team. A lot of what we do kind of dips in between other responsibilities and aims and tasks of other teams. And effectively, I feel like community can support any team with their goals. So I'm really excited to dive into that further with you today. So I'm already throwing the ball in your court, kind of give myself a little breather already. I'd love to get a sense of what you think community managers or community teams do. Maybe sum it up in a few words of what you think that is, just so we know what we're working with, so we know where people are. It's totally fine if you don't have a community team at the moment in where you currently work. Totally fine if wrong answers are welcome. We're actually going to dispel some of those myths. So please give me a couple of phrases or responsibilities or tasks that you believe a community manager would do. I'm going to pop the chat up now, actually. Brand ambassador, product evangelist. Yes. Amazing. Expressing the needs of smaller communities to larger communities. Really great one. Nurture, engage, and help. Really good. I'm seeing some really good stuff. Mm-hmm. Really, really amazing stuff. Conversation facilitator. Yep. Provide resources. Advocate for their work. Support, inform, train. Engagement creator. Oh, wow. This is really good. This is really, really great stuff. It means we don't have to spend as much time going too much into detail, because it's really great to know that people already have a sense of what we do. Gosh, don't you wish we always had these voices in the room each time we have to tell people what we do, Georgina?
I just want to bring all 200 and something of you to every meeting I have.
Gosh, put all 200 of you in a room with my family and explain to them what I do. The main thing is that I wanted to kind of say the first link to community and product is we both have to explain to many people what we do. Which I think is the first commonality. Product managers, I am with you in terms of having to explain in so many different formats exactly what it is we do.
Yep. All right. I think we've got some really good some good starts in here. Yeah. We do have a bunch of people that are very curious to know how you would define it, though.
Yeah. Cool. Let's go into it. Before we go into that, actually, I'd love to dispel some of those misconceptions of around community roles. So often the first thing I tend to hear, and I'm sure Georgina, feel free to jump in, is they're like social media roles. You hear engagement, you hear the word community, and actually you don't really gauge the size of community. So really community at this point could be anything. It could be 10,000, it could be 100, it could be 10. So often people immediately go to social media roles, but actually the roles of those in social media teams are often about building awareness versus community, which is more about building deep relationships. And actually often the size of communities that community teams are leading are very focused and specific, and often a lot smaller than just putting messaging and content out to anyone who could just see it. They're often a little bit closed off and found in a very specific particular place. So which leads to like customer service then. People often think this because of our support functionality that we often do. We support, inherently community teams are there to support the users, the customers, whoever's involved. However, it's just a component of the community experience. Whereas for customer service, it's often the main purpose of the experience. The main purpose is to get that resolution, and the way they track success is through those priorities to solve issues. In community, there's no resolution time. We want people to stay with us as long as possible. We will keep you as long as you'll keep us is the way it goes. And actually the way we tend to measure retention community. So that is something that really kind of provides a different definition. How we differ to sales roles. Often community is a post support after sales. Sales teams, again, they resolve their interaction with that once that purpose of the selling is finished. Community is all about building that long-lasting relationship. I feel like as a salesperson, you'd be quite scared if someone kept coming back to you again and again and again, whether it would be with issues. Perhaps if they were buying, I'm sure you'd be a lot happier. But we want everything. We want the issues. We want the interest in the product. We want to hit absolutely everything on a community standpoint, which is where we kind of differ. So I'd like to ask the audience to think of community as its own thing entirely. I promise I will get to explaining a sense of what we do, but I'd love for you to just kind of dispel any similarities that you or comparisons that you may rely upon, so that you can really get a sense of the real potential opportunities and benefits to collaborating. So that leads me to, what is community management? Community management is the building, nurturing, and maintenance of an often online community built around a brand, cause, or shared interest. I'd love for you to all take a moment to just think about any communities that you're a part of. And these, you may not even realize that you're a part of, but it could be something that you view as a group chat. But actually, if there's a group chat of maybe 20 people, there's someone needing that. Or if you play sports and there's an organizer of that sports community in particular, or if you're just getting into coding, you could be part of a tech community, and even being a part of Pragmatics community, that's a community as well. And if you think about these structures of community, there are people running them. There are people who are tracking and measuring success against these communities. And there are people reporting these communities back to stakeholders if they're associated with a brand or any kind of other business or surrounded around a product. So much like any other role, we have to report back to people, we have to measure success and gain metrics, and we have to have goals like any other team. So I love to kind of dive right into why community is valuable to product teams more specifically. I don't know if I was the first to make this up, but I'll take it. But I honestly believe that community is the inspiration that leads to innovation. So just picking up some of the stuff that I've highlighted randomly, I like to begin with something that pragmatic. I believe in your community, Georgina, that you've mentioned on multiple occasions about Nihito, right? Which is nothing interesting happens in the office. So having easy access to a community is the best way to remain connected with your audiences. Before I actually move on, I'd love to mention the point of if you're coming from a background where you don't have an existing community team, this will still be very useful to you to build the case and make the point of having a community team. Please take away from this and use the benefits of how this team, working with such a team, can actually end up being really valuable to your working product. So getting back to it, invaluable feedback loop. Communities are filled with advocates that champion your product, and who better to get feedback from during ideation, pre and post launch. Think of people who are existing in community as fans. There's actually a certain amount of effort in the onboarding process to a community. You had to sign up, you had to engage, you've probably already spoken to people. There are people constantly re-engaging with community. So therefore, these are people that have shown some kind of investment into what you're doing. Therefore, most importantly, they care. And it's really important to utilize that aspect of that care, because they're going to ultimately want the best for you. And by being a part of the community, that community member wants to see you succeed, because your success eventually leads to a better experience for them. So that's why their feedback loop is absolutely invaluable. Be plugged into the latest. Having your audience accessible means your team is able to keep up with the latest trends. This means you're able to ensure your product continues to be relevant and addresses the needs of your audiences. Not every company has a user research team. Not every product manager has the time to go out and find where their audiences are. When you have a community, they're all in one place. If the community supports and facilitates discussions actually outside of what your product or purpose is, you'll see what your audience is interested in, which hopefully will feed back into what you've already got in the works and what you can come out with next time. I believe this is the most important one, which is actually the reminder of the why. Quite often we can be so set in our lanes. We're talking to other product people, or we're talking to stakeholders, and a lot of our conversations are remaining within the business. But it's actually, when you're stuck, it's really, really great to check in with that community. And it doesn't always necessarily mean having to speak to people, but it's really refreshing to see those conversations and seeing how they're interacting with us, what they currently think about something, how they're interacting with one another. Seeing the health of the community, I believe, will remind you about why you're building what you're building and who it's for. And which kind of leads back to that statement of community being that inspiration that leads to innovation. Really, really important stuff. So I hope that kind of shows you some of those values of having a community exist. Please, if you don't have a community right now, feel free to take some of these points to whoever you need to take it to build that. It's really important. Community is really in demand, and honestly, it's speeding up so quickly. And community, I truly believe, is the future. Cool. So moving on to what can product teams offer to community teams. So if you've got a community team that currently exists, you might be thinking, what can I offer them? How can I approach them? And effectively, I'd love for you to think of this as the structure of that bridge that we mentioned earlier. So how to build your part of the bridge. Some things that I found really useful from product teams and which has really helped with the collaboration aspect, is when product teams have offered their time. It's really hard being on community teams and hearing, getting an understanding of how much time you have as product managers and product teams, and offering office hours with yourselves for the community. Feeds back to the Nahito, which is nothing interesting happens in the office. Oh, got it nailed. So yeah. So this is your opportunity to experience Nahito, as well as for us, it's really great to open that dialogue. As some people have said in their feedback, we're conversation facilitators. We want to facilitate that conversation. I can guarantee you now, community members will want to speak to you. It's really exciting. We can offer it as a perk, as a part of being our community. A value add to being a part of our community is getting to liaise and having some office hours with our product team. So please do offer that time if you do have it. And it doesn't have to be anything as committal as, it can be as flexible basically as you'd like. Is it a monthly town hall? Some people call it a town hall, some people call it, but you can make it as fun, make it very fun. You can look for examples. Another thing I'd like to propose is weekly and bi-weekly roundups shared between teams. When I'll link to example, when I was at Bumble, it was really, really helpful for us to see what the latest was from our product teams. And often product teams were sending so many emails and reports out to so many other people across the business that actually it was really great for us to get an insight into some of that. Because what we do is kind of turn that into a bit more of a digestible format to go back to our community, which means the community will remain engaged with your products. It will keep us informed. So if we get any questions about products and so on and so forth, we're able to answer them, as well as we can go back to you with feedback about what the community has taken interest in as well.
Yeah. I've got I'm going to interject with a question here, Faiza, because we've got someone who has a question, which is a fantastic question in my opinion. I may have missed this, but are communities internal or external?
Oh, really great question. So you can have both. So you can have communities that are internal, you can have communities that are external. The kind of different definitions coming to mind from you saying that is internal communities. You can have private communities, effectively, is what you're saying. Can you have communities that are invite only? People have to have worked to a certain point to be involved. I can give you an example. Spotify has a really good community program that's not well known. It's called their Rockstars program. And you have to reach a certain amount of, you have to do a certain amount of tasks to be able to qualify to be a member. And that's a closed community. And then you have open communities, which are absolutely available for anyone to sign up for and join. External communities that you even have communities that run on social media profiles. So for a long time, Somalis in Tech was run by Twitter, which seemed as a external community as anyone could join. And we've moved since to Slack, which is a bit more of a closed community. However, we still operate with the whole everyone can join, very much so. I hope that kind of nails it. Otherwise, something else that comes to mind is, depending on the size of companies, they also do have internal communities. So for example, I know the person who runs Google's internal communities, and he run effectively, they have such a big employee base that they need a community manager to manage the employee base and keep them engaged. Is another example of internal communities I can think of. But I hope that addresses your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, Faiza. And I'll add to that kind of in this conversation, we're really talking about external communities here. Mm-hmm. So this is a community that is full of your customers, users or buyers, depending on the use case, right? And that could be private or that could be public. These kinds of lessons will apply either way to that one. Yeah. We have a couple other questions in here. Would you like them now, or would you like to wait until the end?
I'm happy to hit them now. Yeah, okay. I've got a timer. I've got a timer next to me.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. So let's see. So another kind of clarifying question that I think we should answer now to make sure everyone gets the most out of the conversation. Sure. How do you differentiate your community versus your user base? Are they always different? Are they the same? How would you approach that one?
Yeah, 100%. So I can give you actual examples. So when I worked at Bumble, I was a part of their community operations team, and my community was our user base. So our user base didn't interact with one another outside of the actual product purpose, which is matching and chatting, which isn't, it's not the kind of community which I'm discussing today. It effectively handled more as a user operations role, so far more of that customer support and relaying that product feedback and advice back to product teams. So that is not the kind of community that I'm discussing today. The kind of community I'm discussing today is very much like what I've done at Peanut with our ambassadors program, and also what I'm doing currently at Facebook too, with our developer circles program. The kind of community I'm discussing are intentional communities where you're creating a space where you can facilitate conversations, connections. People are there with that shared purpose to discuss your product effectively. And think of it as when fan bases come together. It's very much like that. But far more intentional than just a fan base that might come together on Twitter or something. We've got a team working on growing this fan base, nurturing this fan base, maintaining this fan base, making sure they're happy with their experiences.
Awesome answer. Thank you for adding that. There are a couple more. I see them, and we will definitely get to them. So if you have other questions, please feel free to keep popping them in. But for now, I know what's on the next couple slides, and I know you're going to want to see it. So I'm going to let you keep rolling.
Yeah, and also I tend to I will waffle, so I'll try not to waffle because we want to get to the questions. So let's get straight to it. Yeah, so weekly, bi-weekly roundups, please do share that information with your community teams. You can make it even more conversational, add questions of what you're looking for from the community, add some small tasks that the community team can execute during the period of that next week when you next speak to them. Incorporating community and reports for stakeholders. Something really fun about incorporating community in your stakeholder reports is especially this happened during my time at Peanut, I was able to provide a lot more qualitative information and really rope in some really good stories from our community members, which kind of just lightened up the report a little bit for stakeholders. Our CEO was able to take stories from our community and user base back to our her investors, and that all came from being involved in the reporting process. Sometimes it's really great just to collaborate in that way, especially because often you're both reporting separately anyway. So just see how you can make A, save time for the stakeholders, B, save time for both teams for having to work on it in separate streams, and actually just collaborate. You're all trying to communicate the product. You're all advocates of the product. And it just makes more sense to work together at that capacity. Committing to a project when quarterly and yearly goals when setting quarterly and yearly goals. Something really, really great that I love to do, I'm loving doing right now at Facebook, is that effectively we're working with our product teams, watching them and talking to them about them setting their quarterly and yearly goals, and looking for opportunities where we can get community involved, which has been really fun. And it's something really fun for our product teams to get involved in too. And it's actually a way of accelerating them to get to their goals, collecting those stories pre-launch before certain features come out on the products, launching improvements, and just generally creates a far more better user experience for everyone involved, not just the community involved, but actually the wider customer base. And what you'll find is that the more collaboration you'll see, and the stronger the community response is, the bigger the sales, the bigger the satisfaction amongst your customer base, and you'll see that trickle down effect. And the final one is community access to beta products and services. This is like the lowest hanging fruit. Why I say this is because this is like one of the biggest value adds to joining a community. If I'm being told I'm getting exclusive access to a beta version, I'm going straight into it, and I would love to take part in it. And what's really cool about people signing up to betas is that they've signed up to give you feedback, and made it known that they're happy to give you feedback about these beta services. So this is a really easy win within community and receiving that feedback. So what can community teams offer you as product teams? And this is what I think about in terms of finishing that bridge. So I've previously implemented a You Said We Did, and what that basically is an update series for the community, which communicates improvements implemented by the product team as a result of receiving that product feedback from the community. Why that's really helpful, it makes the community feel heard and listened to. They often are far more engaged as a result, and actually end up caring about the product a whole lot more when they feel like they've had a hand in the way the product is run, and the way the product is formed. And I feel like that's also a really easy win for the product team, because you've established a lifelong person to continuously give you that feedback. In the past, I've even showed these community members how to give constructive feedback, which is really useful for product teams, something constructive that they can actually take back. Set up a community advisory board, another almost a standard across communities. And actually, if you know a community team that doesn't have this just yet, really advise you to get them to set one up. A community advisory board is a group that product can regularly lean on for support. Why? They've volunteered their time, and committed to providing that feedback to your team. And what's really good about the board is that you can lean on them anytime. Effectively, you can send them an email straight away. Often what I've seen in the community boards that I've set up or been a part of is teams can totally bypass me talking to them, because I know that we've made that agreement that they're going to be in contact with you, which is really, really handy. Creating shared goals and metrics. Like I mentioned earlier, customer satisfaction is usually high amongst those in the community. We are effectively, in a lot of ways, we're trying to aim for the same things. Just think of community doing it for a smaller audience. So it just makes sense to have those shared goals. Some examples that in Peanut, for example, we were retention was a goal, and retention is absolutely a goal in community. We want to keep people happy and engaged as long as possible. Growth is a goal. Growth is absolutely a goal for community too. We want to see what gets people engaged and what gets them interested into the community. So yeah, share those with your community teams. They're really helpful, and it just also puts more heads working towards this one goal, which obviously a lot more innovative solutions will come as a result of it. And another thing communities can do is offer their expertise to the product team by reviewing briefs and contributing to product roadmaps. This was actually one of my favorite things to do, especially when I was working in smaller companies. At the moment, I'm at Facebook, very siloed. Like, I don't get as much visibility into product roadmaps and briefs like I used to. But honestly, one of my favorite things in the world was kind of putting my product hat on. And this is something that I've been taught by other product managers that I've worked with, not something I've formally gone to learn myself, and building that relationship with them end up me creating those briefs and providing those briefs with my community knowledge. They found that really helpful. So one thing I really recommend is perhaps do a day in the life with your community manager. Show them how to create a brief, show them the kind of solutions and feedback you're looking for. So then when those opportunities come, they're able to communicate that a lot better. So actually, before we move to the next one, do we want to answer any questions? Any interesting questions?
Lots of interesting questions for you. Let's see which one I should pick for you. Let's see. So let's dig into kind of a high level one, if you don't mind, because I think it's one that you'll have a great answer for. How do you develop a community when you're part of a smaller company? The company maybe doesn't prioritize community development and maybe isn't investing in community management. Obviously, resources and priorities are competing. Do you have any advice for someone to advocate for a community and how you can get one going?
Yeah, 100%. And Georgina, please do share your expertise on this too, because I'm sure I'm not the only one with this experience. But in the community profession, it's not the oddest situation to be advocating for resources and time and budget towards community, and effectively constantly showing the value of community. It's unfortunately the position we're currently in. I do believe it's changing and will continue to change. But that being said, there is so much more resources now out there available that explain the value of having a community in your business, and that speak far more the language of stakeholders now more than ever. I don't think we as people need to be convinced about having a community and the value of it, but actually I understand why that might be a conversation and an argument having to be made for stakeholders. So the first thing I'd say is start with, you can be really hacky with communities. Communities are not necessarily created by the systems, but actually just created from people being motivated and engaged. That's it. It doesn't matter where you put it. There's loads of free platforms you can host a community, and there's loads of hacky ways that you can just start to build your case if you can't just yet get that resource and that budget. I feel like stakeholders often react to numbers, engagement, and almost the stuff that you only get post-launch. So maybe what I suggest is to start with something really low lift and understand the interest behind, and get some voices behind what you're trying to do. Build that case, maybe even start the actual community. You can always relaunch it when you have more stuff, and more resource and more buy-in from stakeholders, but don't let that hold you back from starting the community at all. I 100% recommend that. Do you want to add anything, Georgina?
No, I think that is really well said. I think that, when you are advocating for a community, I think of a community really like a megaphone for any other goal that you have inside your organization. So the existence of a community through a company is really an indication that that organization has made relationships with their customers a top priority. So they, it's a little bit of a sneaky thing to say, but if you go to your stakeholders and say, our customers are top priority, right? The answer will always be yes. And, you have to be tactful, but it's a little bit of a way to say, okay, I have a way for us to make that really evident. Because we feel that way and we genuinely believe that our customers are our top priority. I've discovered an approach where we can make that really clear to them, and make it self-evident to them that we believe that, right? And then the other approach that you can use is really just connecting that to every other high-level organizational goal. Community as a tool is incredibly flexible. Community wants nothing more than to enable other high-level organizational objectives. That is really kind of the blanket priority for a community professional. So, community can support customer service. Community can support brand loyalty. Community can support product and ideation and, all of the above. So really think about, like, what are the top 3 things that your company cares about right now? Like, what are the big challenges? And then figure out, can a community support those things? Can I use community as a tool to bring about those outcomes faster or better?
Hit the nail on the head. Yes, this is exactly why it would have been really unfair to rob all of you of Georgina's wisdom on this. So really appreciate those words. Keeping an eye on time, I'll just crack on. We haven't got very much left anyway. I wanted to leave you guys with some tangible steps from here. So what's next? Where should you begin? Effectively, begin by getting connected. So reaching out to your community team and setting up a meeting just to understand each other's priorities and roles a little bit more. I always found the best way of collaboration is just to fully understand what a person's doing, what projects are they working on, what are their end goals, even understand their personal goals, because that's how you get people's real buy-in. When you're able to identify, hey, there's commonality here, and it would be really great if we could work together. Find that opportunity, identify those potential shared goals, then both teams commit to short and long-term collaboration opportunities. I really mean that. And I'm also really encouraged to make that visible to stakeholders too. I feel like anytime stakeholders have seen us teams, community and product teams collaborate, they've been really sold on feeling that whatever was going to come out is going to be really informed and therefore will lead to success. So it's all about finding that opportunity, have an idea session, which is actually the next point, execute. Start with low-hanging fruit by piloting some of the hows outlined in my previous slides. And if you don't end up doing that, I honestly would suggest having regular idea sessions and workshops. Peanut, one of the best and fun things our product head of product did was just to have idea sessions with everyone from every department. And he'd often get me to co-host it just with my community hat on. And it often was the case that whenever we collaborated, it just ended up being more fun for everyone across the company. So I feel like we as community, because we're thinking about the end person, and more importantly the actual experience of the people we're trying to serve, it can be quite fun, and I feel like we need to inject fun back into what we do. I feel like we can be so serious, and just capture those low-hanging fruits is the first thing I'd say, especially in regards to community, which we're constantly trying to justify our values, right?
Yeah, well said.
Cool. So actually, right, bang, I'm on 36 minutes, nearly bang on time. Please do let me know how you get on, and good luck with absolutely everything. Like I said, if you don't have a community team or a community just yet, please use the points outlined and those values outlined as a way of advocating. There's so many resources also out there in terms of advocating to stakeholders to create community within your business. Otherwise, if you do, please do get in touch with them. Let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear. And I believe my details are being shared post this event. So please do connect with me. I'd really love to hear from you.
Yeah. So we're going to post how to get in touch with Faiza in the chat here. Are you up for a couple more questions? We've got a bunch of them in here that people want to know. So there's two questions I'm going to ask you because I think that they are similar. They're not similar, but I think that you'll answer them similarly based on what I know of your work. So the first one is, when it comes to B2B products, how do you get your customers to be excited about a beta program? And how do you get them to want to give valuable feedback, right? Is the first one.
Yeah.
And then the second one is, in your experience, what would you say brings in the most engagement or the peak of interest from your customers in community? This question asker is currently getting tumbleweeds in his community, so he's got a ghost town going on. So both engagement questions. How do you get your customers and your community members to want you? How do you get them to come into your beta program and be excited about it?
Cool. Okay, for the first one, B2B is really interesting. I do honestly believe I feel like the approach is the same, but it's just more tailored. I feel like B2B, actually, you have the advantage of knowing that your customer has very specific goals and what they're trying to achieve. And actually, there's far more low-hanging fruits in terms of capturing their attention. To get them involved in a beta, you just try to associate what you're doing with their business goaling and what are they trying to achieve while working with you. And I think it's all about getting that sense of excitement as well, which is what community is about. If we're delivering any news, we've tried to make it as exciting as possible, which hopefully then will translate into the community. So hugely, and it should be absolutely the same for B2Bs. Is this something that person can take back to the business and be really excited about? You have to think a lot about delivery and communication. Best way to think of it is, what's the value add? Because while there may be a ton of benefits to a community member to join, you have to be able to communicate that, and B, make it seem as enticing as possible, and make it seem almost personalized, tailored to what they're trying to achieve as well. It often helps with trying to fight your case on the other side. B2B customers are often someone who's a representative of a company, and if they're going to do something, they probably need a sign off from someone else. So you'd need to get that buy-in from them in the first place. So have a chat with them, understand their priorities, and see if you can help them build that case for them to take back. And then for the second one, the crickets, we've all been there. Can I just say, we've all been there. We have all been there. Launching communities though exciting, can be an incredibly soul crushing experience as well. But you've got to roll with the punches. We community people are firefighters. Not everything goes to plan, and you're putting out fires, and you can't get too attached to a launch. I just feel like you just have to almost disassociate yourself. You do the launch, and then you respond to however it's been reacted to. So if it's crickets, then back to the drawing board. What are some quick wins you can do in terms of engagement? It could be as simple as reviewing the onboarding process. Is there any kind of hiccups in the onboarding process? Go through the onboarding process as a member. Do you feel like, oh, this is quite long, or this is a lot of effort for me to get to where I need to go? Put yourself in the shoes of community members, especially during the onboarding process. You're putting yourself forward to walking into, it's almost like walking into a room and not knowing where you're walking into. For some people, that could be a really big experience for them. So let's see how we can make that as easy as possible. Otherwise, what engagement and content systems do you have in place to continue the maintenance of the community as well? And you don't have to think. Yeah, I suggest having an idea of what you do for a big community and then what you do for a small community, because even if there's 2 people in there, how have you made sure that those 2 people have remained engaged and excited? Those 2 people may go word of mouth and bring more people in. So try and hit all bases. And another thing that's really great is think about personas if you haven't just yet. So who are the kind of people you're trying to hit? Build out that character profile and see how your community is answering their needs as those characters.
Yeah, I'll pipe up on this one if you'll allow me.
Go for it.
For this one, I would also add that, this is so similar to product management and everything that kind of we believe in at Pragmatic, which is you can just ask them why they don't like it. Right? If it's just like launching a product, if you launch a product and it doesn't sell and nobody buys it, you're like, oh, I obviously this doesn't solve the market problem, right? And so then it's back to what are your market problems and kind of going out and doing market visits and getting that customer and that data, right? And it's exactly the same in the community. It's the same kind of philosophy. So there's lots of reasons why a community adds a huge amount of value to your organization. And we could make the argument that a community could add value to every organization, right? If you gave Faiza and I a situation, we could kind of put together a use case, right? But what a lot of people forget is they get really excited about all the value to the organization. They don't think about why would a member want to be part of this? What kind of value is this offering the people that participate here? Which, is a really easy mistake to make. But then in retrospect, you're like, don't, that's the whole point, is to do something that they really like. So I would also recommend kind of going back and making sure that the community is designed to support the success of your members, right? And doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be a hardcore research project. You're just like, hey, can I ask you why you're not doing anything here? Right? You can be really transparent. Community is about bringing human into
Yeah, I was just thinking that the best community managers, and just say to people, hey, listen, I tried to do this thing and here's what I was trying to do, and I'd love to know why you weren't interested. The more you humanize your response to people, the more they'll feel they feel even more motivated to give you that real constructive feedback. I'm so human at this point. I used to think I had to be like this body to communities, and actually that wasn't very helpful, and sometimes you forget the needs of people when you do that. But when you humanize it, it makes people approach you as well. If there's something missing, they'll just come to you and say if there's something missing. And another thing I'd like to mention is just quickly, the value add that gets them in isn't necessarily the thing that's going to make them stay. So think of those things as 2 different experiences. Great, you got people in, and actually getting people in is sometimes the easiest part of community when you've got a really great plan. But what's that maintenance looking like? What's that nurturing looking like? Sometimes you might even have to think about how does the role of a community member evolve? Because you're going to have community champions who are so engaged and so motivated. What's next for them? Like they're putting in all this energy. They need to know how you've thought about what you're going to do with that energy. So that's another tip.
Yep, agree with that as well. I've got another good one for you. This one really focuses around customer service. So the question is, as customer service teams move into customer success teams, and they're more focused on the end-to-end customer journey and experience, which, as an aside, we love, because this is really community philosophy starting to infuse itself into other roles and other functions. The question is, when that happens, customer service becomes customer success, does community become part of their responsibility?
Absolutely, because just like community, you have to think in community, you're thinking about the end-to-end experience anyway. We even have to think about people offboarding. Like that's the thing. We can't pretend that people won't want to leave our community and think about the process there too. But there absolutely is community aspects to customer success. One of the issues actually with the community profession is that there's about 1 million job titles that kind of effectively describe community roles, and it makes it really hard for community professionals to navigate. But yeah, 100%. I definitely see how the parallels between customer success and community, because there's no resolution effectively. You're constantly checking in with that customer, and you're using your listening skills and decoding their feedback to make sure it's actually digestible and understandable to the people it needs to go out to, and ensuring that whatever they've purchased remains something that's relevant and continues to address their needs, or the service continues to address their needs. So absolutely, very, very similar.
Yep, absolutely agree. All right, let's do one more here, and then we'll let you off the hook. And for folks that there's a lot more questions here than we have time for, so I see your questions. I appreciate your questions. If we didn't get a chance to get to them, I really recommend that you reach out to Faiza. You can find her on LinkedIn, and then also her link tree is right there. So check that out and connect with her directly. But here's the last one. How do you manage confidential product data or NDAs when you're in communities, especially a product-focused community? What do you do about that from the organizational standpoint?
Yeah. So in case you missed it, I work at Facebook. So as you can imagine, the kind of work that goes into there, it's nearly impossible for them to be working by themselves to be doing what they're doing, because it's in the interest in the entire business as a whole to be involved, whether that's legal or communications or policy or marketing or products, and even C-suite and stakeholders. Everyone has to have a hand in the community pool, because effectively these are some of your most important customers and users that they're handling. Of course, they want to have a hand in that. And in the case of NDAs and privacy, it's, again, when you offer community members this exclusive opportunity to be a part of something even secret, that's really exciting. I'm a part of this whole secret. I've had to sign an NDA. Like, this actually adds to the experience versus be a barrier, because people like to feel like they're being provided that as a value add. So I've never personally had a problem getting community members to sign an NDA, or get them to adhere to privacy rules, or sign anything, because often they're that motivated and enthusiastic about the product or service that they're more than happy to do it, and actually solidifies their status as a community member, and feel important effectively. Georgina, do you want to add to that?
I don't have anything else to add to that. I think that you've absolutely nailed it on the head. And I totally agree. Again, I'll just echo, because what I hear a lot is like, we're telling people, no, really, it's not a favor. These people are excited to be here. It's a value to them, right? And a lot of times people don't believe me. I had someone ask me the other day, they're like, okay, but why do these people keep coming back? again and again. Like they come here all the time. Like, why do they like this community so much, right? And it's because that doesn't just happen like magic. You can't just buy a community platform and turn it on and all of these people just come. Community is a discipline. It's a practice. Obviously, Faiza and I are both community professionals. That's what we do. There's a whole industry that works on this, but community is also a philosophy, right? And so when you build a space like this with that philosophy front and center all the time, how do I make this a really valuable space for my customers? How do I just do things that will surprise and delight them constantly? How do I just make their lives better, make it easier for them to find info? How do I make them feel included? How do I make them feel seen and special and validated and just like my friend, right? It's pretty core. And so that's really intrinsic and motivating in that way. So that's the answer to like, wait, but how are you getting these people to be excited about doing all of these things? I think it's really just kind of going forward with that philosophy.
And actually, the best way to figure out and put yourself in the shoes of those members is to actually just be a member yourself. That is like the biggest tip of really cracking community, which community professionals don't tell you, which is we're all part of different communities because we need to be a member to understand the member experience for our own community. And often we're just community nerds anyway. So we just love being a part. I'm a part of like a product design community. I have no interest in product design. I just think the way they run their communities are really cool. And often just borrow loads of philosophies from that. And that's what we do. We borrow from one another because just like any other industry, community as a profession is constantly evolving as we're seeing the adoption of new platforms, Clubhouse, Twitter, like the way Twitter's adding a load of new features to see how they can facilitate community a lot more. We've got to keep on top of it, and that's the way we do it. We see what other people are doing, and I think as community people, we love to, outside of our full-time jobs as community people, we're just constantly in communities outside of that. So it's just something we tend to do. But yeah, that's one thing I definitely recommend. If you're not part of the pragmatic community, as an example, look at Georgina's fantastic work and her team's fantastic work, and just get some advice from that alone. People direct it to 100 books, but it's the real experience you learn from, I believe.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I will drop the link to the Pragmatic alumni community in there. We are a private community for alumni. So that is a criteria for us. So we would love to have you join if you're a Pragmatic alum. And we have a lot of fun in the pack. But with that, I'm going to wrap us up and be respectful of all of your time and Faiza's. Again, if you're really interested about bringing this to your organization, I really encourage that you reach out to her. This is, something that she knows an incredible amount about. And so, she's a really wonderful resource who I look to all the time for information and insight. And again, she works in a consulting capacity. So I encourage that you reach out to her. Her link tree is on the slide. So grab that and reach out and connect with her on LinkedIn. She's just delightful and very friendly. So in any case, with that, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. And we will see you next time. I think there's another slide. Will you pop me over?
Of course.
Yes. So speaking of product design, Pragmatic has a new course coming up, which is a course that is designed specifically for product people that are working with their design team. So just like we learned today about how you can best collaborate with your community team, this is really how you can have an exceptional relationship with design. And then if you pop to the next slide, I will tell you about our next product chat that we're excited to have. So we are going to be meeting with Mike Donahue on March 9th at 1:30. No relation to me, pure coincidence, but I will be hosting the conversation and really looking forward to that. Designing for change. So hope that you can join us there. Mike is the senior UX designer at Dick's Sporting Goods. So that'll be a really great conversation. And with that, I love chatting with all of you today. Thank you for your wonderful and insightful questions and contributions. And thank you so much to Faiza for giving us her time today.
Thank you for the platform, and thank you to everyone who attended. Really, really made my week. So really, please do. I do encourage you to continue the conversation. Feel free to get in contact. Any further questions